Hey there, how are you doing? How's your watercolor journey going? I hope they're going well. I have a quick little study today doing a landscape with some architecture in it. It's really about the shape that I've worked with here. It's just rectangles and squares that we have to work with, and then some irregular shapes for some tree trunks and bare trees in the scene. It's very colorful, kind of has a little Halloween vibe for October, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. It's something simple, and we should be able to get through this fairly quick. So let's get started. So I'm working with this image, and it's just inspiration. I've sketched out onto the piece of paper a quick layout of the topic that's in the photograph, but it's composed slightly differently. I've taken a lot of liberties with it. It's not quite the right proportions. It even is kind of a wonky thing, and I did that on purpose too, just to show you that it doesn't have to be identical to the photograph. So I'm going to use the photograph mainly for the color of the house, but I think I'm going to mix up and change the color of the sky a little bit. And we have some rocks in it, so if you haven't been practicing your rocks, this is a good exercise for rock description of rocks in your piece. The house is just a square, just a rectangular shape. The roof is essentially a rectangle in perspective, and yeah, it shouldn't be a tough thing to accomplish. It's just going to really test and work with your skills and your understanding of the states and stages of watercolor. I'm working with my tube paints with my porcelain palette, the good paper. So this should be a lot of fun. It's not a very big piece, so this should go together fairly quickly. And I want to start with the sky. I'm going to get a little bit of this color right here, and I don't want a lot of saturation in it, and I'm going to get a little bit of burnt sienna in this, warm it up a little bit. It's now kind of a gray color, and then I'm going to put a touch of yellow ochre in it to get more of that color, a little more of a warmer rust or yellowish color. So I've got that happening, and then I'm going to pop just a little bit of green. I'm going to pop it up here, right there. So I could have started with that color. So, all right. I'm going to start out with wet on dry, and as it's wet, I'll introduce some other colors into the sky. This will go pretty quick. It shouldn't take long at all, and we'll get right in here. It's pretty saturated, and that's good. I like that. Just going to pull it across the top there, make sure it's irregular, and I'm going to just come in, loosen it up, and lighten it up. Kind of work around the shapes. I like the peekaboos, so you can really see how the colors interact on the paper, this better paper. It has a lot of nice texture to it. It's absorbent. I'm going to hit that edge right there, loosen that up right up against it, define those chimneys a little better. And then I'm just going to keep pulling it down. It's still very damp. I'm going to throw just a little more, and I might just throw a smidge of orange into it as well. There we go. Ooh, that'll do the job. So we'll just throw a little more of that orange in there. And we're going to get some interesting color interactions. There we go. All right. I'm going to go ahead and throw some of that orangish color into this foreground of the ground right here. I'm going to work around some of the rocks. If I can keep it nice and angular. And I do want, I am painting around those rocks, so. And that's very wet. We'll come right up along the door. A great looking little house right there on the edge of that cliff. And I'm going to grab my other brush. I'm just going to pick right there, right against that edge of that rock. There we go. And while that's damp, actually I'm going to use my smaller brush. I'm going to throw some of this color into it as well, just to kind of get some color complexities. This is the initial wash, so it's going to dry lighter. And this is very thin. There's not a lot of pigment in it, so I'll throw a little more, get a little more burnt umber into this. There we go. Get a little more of that green. And all of this color, it's just going to mush around, and that's okay. It's just going to give me something to work with when we get to that point. All right, so that's nice. And as that's drying, we got some fun stuff happening in the sky. I'm going to get a little more of a burnt, or I'm sorry, an ultramarine. I'm going to try to make a nice rock color. I just overdid the green. There we go. We're getting it grayed down a little bit. Throw a little burnt. I'm going to throw a little sepia in there. That'll knock down that color. There we go. So I've got quite a mess on my palette, but that's okay. I'm just going to scrub in some of these colors on the face. I'm going to try to leave some of the edges, peekaboos. There we go. Let me get a blue. There we go. Again, these are very general shapes. Getting some colors happening, interacting in here that we can then tighten up and work with when we get to our structure and detail stage. So I like that bluish color. I'm going to keep that color right there, that grayish blue. And that's essentially ultramarine and mixed in with some of that burnt sienna. It's not a real strong blue, but I'm looking here. Whoops. Let's look. I'm going to go ahead and scrub in some of that color right up here. I'll throw it up onto the chimney as well. There we go. I'm going to try to leave some peekaboos in that roof line. There we go. So that's blocked. And then let me clean a little spot on my palette. There we go. All right, now I'm going to come in. I'm going to get some of this hot color there. Throw some. You know, I can't tell you the name of that right off the top of my head. Let me look. Oh, I don't have them. I don't know where they went. All right, so let's get a little yellow there. All right, so we got some really strong colors right here. Let me get a little. There we go. All right, so now we can come in. I'm just going to come in and block in this. Work around. It's going to go from highly saturated, and I'm going to thin it out so I get some modulation in the hue. Put a little more down in here. All right. Again, like I said, this shouldn't take too long. So we're really almost done with some of the overall blocking of this. I want to throw a little more orange in that, make it a little more intense with the orange. We'll just drop it in and then we'll feather it out. Feather it a little bit. Perfect. Yeah, that's looking fun. Throw a little more of it right up on top. Knock it down a little bit more. There we go. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to let that dry. And at this point, we have pretty much blocked everything. And it just simply needs to dry at this point. Get this chimney right there. There we go. All right, so the color blocking is done. We're going to just let it calm down and dry a little bit. And then I'll come back in and we'll start finding specific shapes. Oh, I know one thing. Before I get started doing that, I forgot one thing. I'm going to get a little of that bluish color. That bluish gray, maybe a little more intense. There we go. And maybe a little phthalo in there too. There's some phthalo. All right, so we have a nice intense blue. And I'm just going to drop it in there. And we're going to knock down all the white on the inside of that window. Okay. And we'll do this one as well. All right, and then I'm going to get some serious blue here. That door is blue, really blue. The blues I just painted on the windows are more of a tint or a shade. Not a tint. What am I talking about? I want to make this door here blue as hell. There we go. And now it needs to dry. I'm going to have a hell of a lot of editing to do on this one. We are going to dry now. It's going to take a few minutes. It's that nice arch paper, so it holds moisture quite a while. The background feels pretty good. It's not lifting anything. But right in through here and where I want to start in with the work, it needs to dry for a few minutes. So that, as soon as that orangish color dries, we'll come after it. So hang on, we'll be right back. All right, so this has dried. It's dried enough to touch. I'm not lifting, leaving any marks on the surface. We have this kind of a grayish green, orange color in the background. We got some blues on the roof. It's color blocked. All right, so now we can come in and really start working and adding some of the structure to it. And contrast, a little more saturation, a little more contrast, and just coming after and getting this to read a little better. I cleaned off my palette a little bit. It was a big old soggy mess after the blocking. And at this stage, we're going to be working with a thicker mixture of paint to catch edges and definition and stuff like that. So I think I'll work from the top down on the building first, and then we'll come in and add the treeless, the leafless trees. As soon as we're done with the building, we'll come in and add the leafless trees into the piece. That'll be the end of the piece. We'll start working with the trees in the background. So, all right, yeah, feels good. We got some really nice color interactions. Kind of goes from this light orangish color to this greenish gray. So everything's blocked in nicely. So I need to I'm going to get some combination of burnt. No, that's either a Van Dyke brown. I think the sepia is down here. That's Van Dyke brown. And I have some phthalo blue or ultramarine, and we're mixing up a very thick mixture of the darker color. Then I'm going to just do a little work up, starting from the top and working my way down. So, all right, here we go. Just suggesting shapes. Broken edges. I might come in and paint an edge or two, and then I'll just immediately come over and thin it out and soften it up. And as I do this, I'll probably have to mix up some darker colors again. A larger puddle. All right, and let's come down here. And this is really just drawing at this point. I'm just going to get irregular edges. It doesn't have to be a straight line. There we go. Come over to that side. So I'm really kind of jumping ahead and kind of plopping in some of the structure on the roof right off the bat. So, moving past all of the big shapes and stuff, and really kind of jumping, fast forwarding into some details and stuff. So now that I got that top edge done, I'm just going to add a little more of a tone with the same color to get a modulation on the surface of the roof. And this is now back to stage 2, where that up there I was doing some pretty funky stage 3 stuff right off the bat. So you can kind of jump around with your stages. That's looking pretty good. Throw a little bit like that. All right, and then I'm going to let that dry before I do any more to it. There's a little more structure work I need to do, but that's looking pretty good. And there's probably, as I let this dry and I come back to it, I'll probably throw a blue glaze right up in this center area of it. Let me get a little more of that mixed up. It's gotten a little thin touching in. Here we go. Come on. Here we go. So it's a nice, deep, dark, cool gray, dark gray, Payne's gray almost. And we'll throw that in there. All right, cool. That's just a little smidge of structure right off the bat. We'll tone down this side. There we go. All right, and then we're going to come in right underneath. We'll define that shadow line right under the roof. Comes clear over. A little gap right there. There we go. All right. And then I'm to mix up a dark orange. Okay, so, and I'm going to use that. I'm going to come down here. I'm just going to define the edge of the house right there with an edge. And actually, I'll throw it right up underneath here as well. And I'm going to feather it. All right, now let's do it again on the other side. Like I said, it's just essentially drawing. I'm just adding a smidge of structure to it. We'll throw a little bit of that right down here on this crunchy corner. I might feather just a little bit of that. There we go. I'm going to get a little more saturated orange now. And I'm just going to pull a little more saturation onto the surface. This is dry brushing. I've got a loaded brush, not a lot of liquid to it, so I'm going to be able to catch a lot of texture from the surface of the paper. And create textures. That's essentially all I'm doing. Get a more saturated orange there. Kind of happens right along in here too. Yeah. There we go. All right, cool. We're getting there. Throw a little bit right up here. All right. I'm not talking much, I'm focusing, so I need to learn as I'm doing these videos to just let that happen. And maybe my videos will look a little better. So, all right, there's that. That's got a pretty nice feel to it. I think that's going to have to dry again. I might even put another glaze of color on it to bring and saturate up the color a little more. And I'm going to grab, let's see here. I'm going to grab some raw umber in that orange. I'll throw a little bit of that green into it. Okay, so we got our nice greenish brown. Now I'm going to come in, I'm just going to scrub in some of the darker colors for this ground. Cool. And we'll just get some directions going here. Cool. Yeah, it's working. Little dry brush there. Little surface crunch. Okay, right up against the rock. And we'll throw that out. Come on, quit it. There we go. It's still pretty wet. All right, we'll come down here. Okay, that's all very much just irregular shapes, sharp edge, soft edge, popping contrast into the spots, and just using it to define edges. I'm going to come up right up here. Get this shape right there. I'm going to do a little drawing right there. Perfect. And all right, and as that's drying, I want to get a little more of some raw sienna, kind of an orangish color there as well. A bit of that color right there. Okay, I'm just going to glaze it on top. If it softens up the dark stuff too much, I'll just come back in and we'll reestablish it. With some darks. There we go. All right, so the ground is looking pretty good. That's dried pretty nicely. So let me come after some of the rock face again. All right, now we got to keep the rock face pretty angular. So I'm going to look for some shapes, dark shapes, and we'll just kind of drop them in. Make triangles and rectangles, broken edges, things like that. That's what's going to sell it. There we go. Pull it down, get some crunchiness, keep it angular. Okay, throw some cracks in there. There we go. Do that one, throw another angle on it. There's another facet, perfect. And we'll find another one right here, we'll pull it down. Make it a big square. I'm going to try to keep some of that crunchiness from the paper. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Now, and again, I'm just quickly glancing at the reference just to get a sense of the shape of the rocks. I'm not worried heavily about being true to the photograph. As long as it reads like a rock, I'm happy with that. I got a great big space right here that needs to be dark. I got a little more color variety. I just mixed up a little new batch of color. So the rocks are looking pretty good. I'm going to come in, go that way. And it's reading. It's starting to work. Throw another one up here. And there we go. So those will suffice for the cliff face. And we are really getting a lot of general shapes, lights and darks, playing with contrast, just to get the eyes to see the patterns. All right, so that's drying. This is all dried up here. Oh, I just felt a wet spot, so it's not dried up there quite yet. So it's still a little damp up there. That's stage 2. So I'm just going to let that dry for a few minutes, and I'm going to come back after the windows and the door and start layering in a little more structural detail, and we should be done at that point. All right, it's dried for a few minutes. I think we can come after some of the windows and information there. And I think for the shape of the window panes, I'm going to use this little 1/4 inch flat brush here. Mix it with a little bit. I want a little bluish color. I don't want it to be dark. Oh, get over there. I'm having difficulties. All right, here we go. Got a nice little puddle there. I'm just going to come in and first just establish some of these panes right in there with this, just real quick. I don't care if it's perfect. I just want it to establish the shapes, and if they meld together, that's okay too. I want to focus on the windows first, then I'll worry about the door. All right. Again, that door is very blue, so I'm going to mix up just a little more saturated blues. And I'm going to come in right on top of here first. Okay, throw a little bit more on the inside of it. All right, and that's going to have to dry before I do any more to it. But that's looking fun. Okay, and just so I'm not feeling like I'm painting within the coloring book, I'm just going to throw some of this color from the house out into the background, just for a little more something to look at, and see if you can be brave and do that. There we go. That's already feeling more fun. All right. And how's that looking? All right, so that's all wet up there. I can work down here now. Feels dry. I want to get some burnt umber. Some more of that blue. Get a little thicker mixture. I'm going to be working with a small brush because I'm going to be now adding in texture and structure, detail, and we'll see how it goes. All right, these are rocks, so I need to kind of come in and get another layer of rock quality going here. Okay. That's going to need a glaze. But I'm going to go ahead and grab and catch all the structure first. Okay. Okay. Come on, rocks. Okay, we're starting to cook here. Okay, we are starting to make some progress. All right, what else are we doing here? All right, so that's dried. That's still a little damp up there. Yep, still wet right in through there. But I think as this is drying, what I need to do, get a bigger brush, get some of this blue, gray blue. All right, and I'm just going to glaze a little more color on it. Knock down some of the lighter grays. Trying to keep some of them, especially at the top edges. Yeah. cool. All right. All right, I'm going to jump up, back up to the roof. It's damp right there still. I'm going to come after some of the shingle work right up here. Oh, looky there, it's still a little damp right there. I can see it. I'll have to hit that again. It's still a little too tight, or too fuzzy there. A little too wet. Okay. That's looking pretty good. I'm just trying to get an irregular pattern. Is that a thing? An irregular texture. That's a better term. Okay, then I'm going to come up, fix this. All right. Okay, now I'm going to define these windows a bit. Okay. All right, we're getting there. we go. All right, and then come in and get all of the window panes. Cool. All right, we're getting there. How are we doing? 14 minutes into this session. All right, and then okay, I'm going to get a little stronger blue, just blue. And I'm just going to hit some of the panes. Keep dribbling water on stuff. Okay, I'll throw a little more blues down in here. Okay, and here's where I'm going to do a little more blue up in this area too. A little stronger blue, a little more phthalo. Let's put a little phthalo in there. Come on. There we go. Perfect. All right, I'm going to grab a bigger brush again. And I'm going to get some of this yellow and orange. I'm going to throw a glaze. So I'm going to mix up a fairly thin layer, but still saturated. I'm just going to throw a little more intense colors on the surface. Okay, that's going to dry. Throw a little more of it up here too. Perfect. All right, so that has to dry. I'm going to go after the trees in the last step of this little watercolor. So hang on. All right, we are back, and I'm going to go after the trees now. And they're in pretty dark blues as well. So I just mix up some of this existing burnt umber and blues, and we'll just start coming after the trees. Just kind of keep them angular. Try not to meet branches at the same point. And normally, if you can find a direction change at a certain point, that's where you can add another limb in. Throw one right over here as well. There we go. You just kind of, I'm going to get a smaller brush. Okay. I'm doing these fairly quick. If I had a nice big piece I was doing, spend a little more time maybe, but just trying to get this to read just right. There we go. Okay. A little sharper edge right there where it was kind of wet when I went after it earlier. Okay. Get more of an orangish brown. It's the same type of mark. I'm going to make some cracks on the surface here that the tree limbs are, but just a little more surface character going on here. Okay. Dry brush, just creating some interesting textures. Come back with some really dark. There we go. And I think we're going to be able to declare this little sucker done and gotten us into the mood for Halloween. And we're right there. One quick little color down here. And one more thing. Throw a little bit. A bigger brush. I get a little green in here. I just feel like it needs just a swash of green in through here a little bit. There we go. All right, that is our quick little study of a strange little house on a cliff with a Halloween vibe. So give it a try. You're working with just basic shapes, rectangles in perspective. We got stones, irregular shapes, trees. It's got a mishmash of all sorts of good things to work with and try. Don't get too wrapped up in all the detail. Don't think it has to look exactly like the photograph. Just use it as inspiration and refer back to the photograph just for some basic color information and data that you might need to work and plug into it. And feel free to interpret in whatever way feels good. Like, for instance, me throwing that green into the base here. So, hey, if you got any value out of this video, give me a like and a subscribe. Drop me some comments. This was a fun little quick tutorial, and I think it's something you'll have fun doing. So enjoy the Halloween vibe, and we'll see you in the next video.